Professional wrestling as a concept has always been kind of interesting to me. I remember growing up in the early 2010s, always hearing about all these different things surrounding the WWE, but never really watching it. There were things like the rise of CM Punk and Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles, to the once-in-a-lifetime event between John Cena and The Rock at WrestleMania 28 that wasn't really once in a lifetime because they got a rematch just a year later. Which, if you weren't like Paul Walker, it was kind of sort of false advertising. Rest in peace, Paul Walker. You would have loved Fandango versus Chris Jericho. Who am I kidding? No, the fuck you wouldn't.
Sweet mango!
Now, like I said, back then, I really wasn't that big a fan of WWE, but you cut to me now, and I'm a huge fan of it. I have the merchandise, I hold watch parties with my friends for their premium live events. I've been to a couple of live events myself. I love it. But the one thing that has escaped me has been the video games. WWE games as a whole have been pretty uniform with each other throughout the almost 40 years the company has been popular. Of course, with wrestling being a combat sport, it's obvious that the games are going to be fighting games. There are some outliers, mostly a beat 'em up on the Game Boy and some mobile tycoon games, but other than that, they're all mostly just fighting games, including the game we're talking about today. WWE Day of Reckoning 2, released in 2005 by THQ for the GameCube. My favorite wrestling game console. It was developed by Japanese company Yuke's. Now, if you don't know who Yuke's is, they are basically the wrestling game developer. If you look at the timeline of the games that they've made, a majority of them are pro wrestling centric, with most of their catalog, of course, being WWE games, as they were the main developer of almost every WWE game from 2000 until 2K fully took over in 2019. Now, originally I was going to review SmackDown Just Bring It for the PS2, purely because of the inclusion of Fred Durst, you know, the lead singer of Limp Bizkit in the roster, but...
The contest continues!
Yeah, this game fucking sucks. So DOR2 it is! Now, originally when I picked out this game, I fully expected just some kind of simplistic, kind of middle-of-the-road wrestling game experience. However, that's not what I got at all. DOR2 is honestly a perfect time capsule that represents that era of WWE very well, and also just a really fun game to play. Most of the time, but I'll get into that in a bit. Now, you can't talk about the WWE without mentioning their roster. Right now, they have some of the biggest, most talented wrestlers on their roster, with names like Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, Rhea Ripley, and so many others. But DOR2 came out in 2005, so the roster, of course, isn't going to have those stars, seeing as how they were quite literally children at the time. So, looking back at the old roster, how does it hold up today?
This roster fucking sucks.
Okay, well, it's not that bad. It has a good amount of well-known superstars. Stone Cold Steve Austin, Triple H, Bret Hart. Hell, it even has Carlito. I really like Carlito. However, it does have some problems. Two main ones are that it doesn't have a lot of women, only having 4 playable, and it has a lot of mid-carders and just not a lot of legends. I mean, honestly, who's booting up Day of Reckoning 2 just to play as Rene Dupree?
I do. Get the fuck out of my house!
I mean, looking back though, it kind of makes sense. The game was released during the time where a lot of their wrestlers were either jumping ship, mainly to TNA, or were getting released altogether. People like Jeff Hardy, the Dudley Boys, Goldberg, just all gone from this game's roster. However, a positive that shines through in the midst of this, let's be honest, kind of lackluster roster are the models. Now, why would I make such a big deal of the models? Well, considering this game came out in 2005 for the GameCube, where the two types of character models were either cartoonish or the 3D version of the how to draw manga books from your childhood, they're surprisingly really accurate to their real-life counterparts. Well, for the most part. Kurt Angle's kinda off-putting. Something about those eyes.
So I've talked about the roster, I've talked about the models, I've talked about Kurt Angle.
But none of that really matters if the game doesn't play well. So, how does it play?
It plays really well, actually. It feels semi-natural. It's easy to move around, it's easy to attack, but actually learning how to do specific moves can take a bit of practice, for me at least. It took me a while to pick up on some of these mechanics, like how you have to manually lock on to the wrestler you want to attack, leading me to whooping the ref's ass sometimes. Also, some of these button combinations you have to pull off gave me trouble with how short their time windows are. It sometimes felt unfair due to how fast it is at times. Now, to be completely transparent, I was emulating this game on my PC while using a DualShock 3, so my experience was different from, say, if you played it on an actual GameCube with an actual GameCube controller. However, I feel like my criticisms would still stand if I had played on actual hardware, mostly because I absolutely suck at video games.
Now, a weird thing about this game is that it has its own storyline. I know that professional wrestling on TV always has their own storylines, and usually those are playable in the game, something akin to like 2K's showcase mode. However, this is different. The storyline for this game is exclusive to this game.
I'm not joking. This isn't a recap of any past storylines, no past matches from real wrestlers. This is a fully fictional storyline focused on a wrestler that you create. It's literally the ultimate OC self-insert fanfiction. The story is pretty simple. It takes place a month before WrestleMania 21. Triple H and Chris Jericho have a match for Jericho's title, the World Heavyweight Championship. Notice how this is about the Heavyweight Championship and not the WWE Championship, because even back then, they didn't want anyone but John Cena to be WWE Champion. Triple H wins the match. It's announced that the win technically didn't count, so now the title is up for grabs via a tournament where the top two contenders have a match for the belt at WrestleMania 21. That's where the player's character comes into play. To go off on a little bit of a tangent, the character creation in this game is actually kind of detailed, to the point where you can edit different parts of the body. Theoretically, you can make anyone, from other wrestlers to different characters from different media. For this video, I made my own creation. I would like to introduce D-Squeebs. D-Squeebs is entered into the tourney and slowly makes his way up to the top, eventually being one of the top two contenders, having to go against Triple H at WrestleMania 21, until the belt gets stolen and you have to go find the belt by wrestling other people and whatnot. It's not the most outlandish wrestling storyline ever. I mean, hell, we had the storyline involving Eric Bischoff's special cousin Eugene, which is 1,000 times stranger. I just find the fact that they made an entirely new story for this game really funny. But I think the story is made a little bit stranger considering the fact that all the cutscenes in the story mode have no voice acting at all. Zip, nada, absolutely nothing. Which is fine, but it feels a little awkward most of the time.
Now, when I started this game, I expected it just be kind of middle of the road. Just like every other wrestling game, inoffensive, just like everything else. Just playing it safe. What I got was something that went above and beyond almost all of my expectations. Almost. Remember how earlier when I said that this game was fun to play most of the time? This is why.
Now, the WWE has tons of different match types in real life, and a lot of them are playable in this game. That includes the tag team match. Now, you would think playing a tag team match would be fun. You'd have a teammate that you have ringside that you can tag in to change up gameplay, and that would be a nice change from normal single matches. I can confidently say that no, it isn't. I did one tag team match while playing. Just one. And it went for almost 30 minutes. I could barely tag my partner in. I couldn't get a pin without being interrupted. Hell, I could barely get a hit in. Which confuses me because this was against Ric Flair and Triple H. Ric Flair was in his 50s at the time. How did he manage to juggle me like this? It makes me wish Shawn Michaels was here to end his career early.
wants to fight.
Then, after all these trials and tribulations, I won. I just randomly won by some random disqualification. What took the refs so long to DQ them? And of course, since it's Ric Flair, he was all bloodied up by the end. What did I even do to make him bleed that much? Overall, this game is honestly a fun time. Sure, it's just another wrestling game, but I think it shines above the sea of all the other wrestling games purely off of presentation alone.
Sure, there might be some bad parts of the game, but I think the good outweighs the bad tenfold. It is a little outdated, but if you want to take a look into what wrestling was like back in the 2000s, I honestly think that you should give this game a try. And with that, I've been PhantomStar, and I'll see you guys in the next video, where I'll be doing the same thing as I did today, because that's what I do. Happy WrestleMania season, everyone.